Shaming is a form of social feedback. When someone screws up a job or says something stupid in public, there will be a reaction from peers and authority figures. Competence and socially acceptable behavior propel society forward, and shaming is an effective way to motivate someone to get their shit together. Someone who makes a mistake will do whatever it takes to avoid the discomfort of looking bad in the future and will become more adept at navigating the social landscape. That, or they will double down on what makes everyone hate them and continue to be a nuisance. It turns people interested in conformity into slaves, and it makes the free thinkers easier to identify. Shame is a form of manipulation because it is used to control someone's behavior by making them feel guilt or fear. People use this tactic because calling someone's character into question makes them defensive, and they will often do whatever it takes to salvage their reputation. Most people will do anything to avoid being humiliated so their perceived status in the hierarchy doesn't diminish. Shaming is emotional abuse. Sometimes it is low-key and difficult to recognize, like the silent treatment, and other times it's loud and obvious, like being yelled at. I think the former type is more common because it's passive-aggressive, and being passive-aggressive usually allows for plausible deniability. Even if it is an overt form of shaming, many people will put up with it because they feel like they deserve to be chastised for their mistakes. People who want to improve their abilities are often very hard on themselves and feel that getting chewed out is what happens when you don't hit the mark. Shaming is also lazy. Making someone feel like shit is a lot easier than calmly articulating a sound argument, and it's also a great option for people who don't want to let go of the idiotic beliefs that they're so fond of. Why would you go through the hard work of understanding the way things really are when you can just be told what to think and then attack anyone who disagrees? What does shaming look like in relationships? There are many people who shame their partners constantly in order to destroy their self-esteem. They keep grinding them down with insults, yelling, and guilt-tripping until their sense of self-worth is completely shot. This is usually followed by displays of appreciation and gratitude at strategic moments. The person doing the shaming wants the other person's value system to be based on what benefits them. This is what people do. They demolish another person's ego and then rebuild them into the person they want them to be. Negative reinforcement followed by positive reinforcement. This is a sick and twisted game that people play, and it goes on far too often. You see this tactic employed in the military with the screaming drill sergeants, but I don't have a problem with that because the military is where people go to assimilate themselves into a giant killing machine. You break them down, and then you build them back up into a group of devout killers who will obey orders and unapologetically kick ass. But this type of social engineering doesn't have a place in civilian life. The first line of defense when you encounter shaming should be to cut that person off. This may not be possible, at least not right away with a boss or a coworker or a family member, but this works great for anyone else. It really enriches your life when you refuse to associate with people who make you feel like shit. And just because someone is family doesn't mean you are obligated to put up with obnoxious behavior. Like I said earlier, shaming is often difficult to recognize, and even when it is loud, obnoxious, and in your face, some people don't feel justified in telling the person doing the shaming to fuck off because they have been conditioned to doubt themselves. Maybe they grew up with parents who yelled at them all the time. Maybe they grew up in an oppressive religious environment where everyone was always talking down to them and trying to make them conform to a bunch of rules. Maybe a lot of things. Whatever the case may be, it's not healthy to tolerate this crap, especially if it comes in the form of yelling. People who yell think their point of view is so bulletproof and legit that it's not even worth their time to give you a reasonable explanation. Or they are threatened and want to silence you with insults at high volume. Whatever the case may be, I don't think people should yell unless it's an emergency. Yelling for help is fine. Yelling at your spouse, kids, or anyone else is not. Anytime someone is trying to invoke the emotion of guilt or fear, they are trying to shame you. It may sound like,
if you were a good person, you would do this. You don't care about this group because you question this policy. I would do this for you, so you should do this for me. You sound really angry. You are bitter. You need to get over it. I'm disappointed in you.
Blah, blah, blah. We've all heard this before, and it's known as the ad hominem game. It's when people attack the person instead of responding to what they did or the argument they made. It's pretty lame, and it is a pretty good indicator that you are dealing with someone who doesn't have any facts to back up their position. Which brings me to another point. Having your facts straight is important when it comes to shaming. I used to have a difficult time with this because I didn't know enough to shoot down the pseudo-facts that people would throw in along with their shame tactics. I think this mostly applies to political discussions where people on the left will shame anyone who doesn't agree with them, but it never hurts to have a rock-solid foundation of evidence for any topic because the more you know, the more you know. A good way to learn how to debate is to watch or listen to people like Adam Carolla, Ben Shapiro, Stephen Molyneux, or Lauren Southern when they are debating people with impractical Marxist ideas. The comedian Bill Burr is also excellent at this. Keeping the facts straight in your head can be difficult in times of stress, so it is important to remain calm if you make the decision to participate in a discussion that may get ugly. The only reason to involve yourself in this type of interaction is to practice for future debates or to expose an abusive person. It is unproductive to spend time and energy engaging trolls who live for the excitement of getting a rise out of someone else. Sarcasm is a great way of dealing with shaming in public because it also is passive-aggressive. Just because you recognize it when someone is pulling this crap doesn't mean everyone else does, and hitting it head-on can make you look like an asshole. Or maybe you don't feel like arguing with someone in that moment, and you would rather deflect all of the sneak attacks being leveled against you so you can do something more important. This is an excellent way to piss someone off while looking pretty innocuous the whole time. Don't overuse it, but keep it in your arsenal. The only time shaming should be used is when other people are trying to shame you. If someone attempts to silence you by calling you names and impugning your character, then they don't give a shit about the rules and neither should you. Throw it right back in their face and tell them you don't appreciate the shame tactics. Take this play away from them and see if they have any real arguments for you. My guess is they probably don't. Otherwise, they wouldn't have resorted to shame tactics, and this applies to interactions with any type of person. Spouse, significant other, people with an opposing viewpoint, or whatever. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and or share. But if you decide not to do any of these things, I won't shame you for your decision. Thanks for listening, and until next time, peace, success, and God bless.